G'day everyone, I am the man called Kemosabe, the man with the plan from the land down under, the man too dangerous for YouTube, the man that tried to censor but couldn't. And this is my review of KYRIE Book 1 by Matt Crotts. And I do mean by Matt Crotts. As far as I can tell, this guy is a triple threat, having written, drawn and lettered his own work. I received both books from Indiegogo campaign. Somehow I got the second book before the first. Probably something to do with my spam filter. I'm a bit of a boomer. I'm just softly spoken. Reading the second book, I knew this was something different, something that broke the mold of indie books, but I couldn't pick up the story halfway through, so I shelved it until I could get the first book. I'll be reviewing the first book in this video. As always, we'll have a look at the cover, and then the good, the bad, and the ugly of this comic. The cover doesn't look like a traditional comic book cover. It looks like a book cover, maybe to a novel or a YA story or some lushly illustrated children's book. The format is reminiscent of deluxe European graphic novels, thick-spined books with complex and intelligent stories. The primary adjacent colour scheme of the characters is striking, perhaps speaking to the personalities, colour-coding them by their primary attributes. The simplicity of the line work is deceptive. The rendering is lean on detail, but the detail that is there is emotive, full of motion and weight. Matt Crotts is a man who clearly knows the rules of drawing, and in doing so is able to bend these rules as far as he needs to. Every detail on the cover, the borders and flares and scrolls, every accoutrement adds to the feel of the era. Combined with the robes and togas gives the book a distinctly ancient Mediterranean feel before you even open the cover. This cover doesn't look like it would belong on the shelf of a comic book store. It would look more at home on the shelf of a classy bookstore next to hardcover editions of Asterix and Tintin. The book begins with a powerful quote from Alexander the Great. "Heaven will not brook two sons, nor earth two masters." An important man from Rome has arrived in the Egyptian city of Alexandria, named after Alexander the Great, to officiate a festival in honour of the conqueror. In a bid to bring the greater unification to Persia, Egypt and Rome, he has gifts, 3 gold crowns to represent the 3 mighty empires. 2 thieves break into the officials' chambers to steal a ruby known as the Red Lady of Babylon, but a female thief has already switched it out for a fake. She hires the disappointed thieves to help her with a bigger job, but before that, they need to get onto the official's ship. After his speech, the official is confronted by a mysterious, possibly inhuman figure who prophesies at him. The official stabs the figure and orders his underlings to prepare it for examination as he casually wipes the blood from his hands. Pretending to be a slave being gifted to the official, who we learn is called Valerian, the thieves manage to get aboard his ship, stealing it in the dead of night. While on the ship, the 3 thieves notice an odour or scent emanating from below deck, but they're too busy to investigate. It's shown to be coming from a burning censer suspended above a huge humanoid figure bound by chains. The ship is spotted and run down by a Roman galley who recognise the ship as Valerian's, but are suspicious that it's not flying its identifying colours. The female thief leaves the Red Lady of Babylon below decks as she joins the other thieves in fighting the boarding Romans. The gem causes the bound figure to break free of his chains and ignite the precious stone in the censer. This causes it to glow like a beacon, shining a prophecy on the sails before the figure dumps it in the ocean and it explodes, shattering the nearby lighthouse, which destroys the Roman vessel. A single Roman soldier survives the battle and the sinking of the ship and is taken prisoner by the thieves. The large figure introduces himself as Marcus and says that Valerian has plans that threaten the world, and they must stop him. The twin thieves turn on Myrna, the lady thief, and when they threaten her life, Marcus becomes possessed. His eyes glow red and he exhibits superhuman strength, slaying both thieves, but punching a hole in the ship during the process, causing the boat to start to sink. Having just discovered the scroll they need to anticipate Valerian's plans, Myrna and Marcus have no reason to stay, and decide to use debris as a makeshift raft to get to shore. Marcus wants to take the bound Roman soldier with them, but Myrna says to leave him to his fate. Marcus refuses to move unless Myrna promises to help save the soldier's life. She agrees and they leave the sinking ship behind them. Back in Alexandria, Valerian calms an ally who is concerned over the loss of both the ship and the Red Lady of Babylon. Valerian insists he is in control and talks on his love of languages and the idea that all languages descend from a kind of proto-alphabet of images. He talks about how words have power, words like names. During this conversation, he draws what looks like a spirit from a small case and uses it to inhabit, possess, or heal the man he stabbed earlier. Valerian talks about the most important word, an ageless word, and that word is power. Every element of this book is tailored to Matt Crotts' vision. This is obviously a labour of love, drawing upon his area of expertise. He appears to be some sort of scholar focusing on this area and region of the world in his day job, and he clearly knows the era. His knowledge of clothing, fashion, customs and speech is evident in every panel. This isn't some anachronistic TV show with modern sensibilities and slang crammed in. The book is visually vibrant, drawing on the soft pastel hues of modern cartoons while riffing on the refined, exaggerated cartoon proportions of work like Asterix. That European blend of near-perfect realism and Looney Tune-esque distortion. There are scenes of fluid motion and well-weighted action. Smaller, lithe characters leap and flip, and larger characters lumber and smash and crash. Civilized characters stand upright and reserved, and thieving characters lurk and skulk. This book is a visually impressive and unique piece of art. This kind of end product comes not from design by committee or focus groups, not from appealing to niches and chasing popular trends. It only comes from real, deep, ingrained personal passion. There's not a lot to say in this section. The book is very different. I've referenced a few other comics and pieces of media it resembles, but it's not so familiar to anything else that there is a lot of overlap. It is very much its own thing. It's possible that it is too much its own thing to appeal to some people. I guess you could call it an acquired taste. It isn't the most accessible book. A surface level knowledge of the era, area and nations involved in the story helps you to catch up. A lot is presented in book 1 that isn't resolved or clarified until book 2, requiring the reader to act on faith that these elements will be resolved at a later date. A lot of the prophetic language is vague and mystical, like many fantasy prophecies are, and while it makes sense later on, at first it can be a bit inaccessible. Likewise, the art is very loose in some places, deliberately so, and it might require you to reread a page if you weren't focused on the visual clues and elements Matt included. These are all aspects that might make the book harder to access for some audiences, but again, this is Matt's labour of love. He's clearly looking to adhere to a vision, not appeal to a broad, normie demographic. He could have made a more easy to access, realistic looking comic with quips and shoehorned redemption arcs. Instead, he chose to make art. From the moment I opened this comic, I could tell I was in for something different, a different experience. These books aren't like mainstream or most indie books. Matt Crotts is capturing the vast visual language of epics like the Odyssey, the Battle of Troy, and the Labours of Hercules. At the same time, the cartoony, whimsical style is reminiscent of books like Asterix, which is one of the greatest comics ever made. This is a book that is enhanced by even a cursory knowledge of ancient history, Rome, Greece, Egypt, Persia. This is a book that has enough complexity and depth to satisfy an adult audience, but the content and wonder that enraptures younger children. Children will enjoy the colourful, soft art, while adults can wonder at the misleading simplicity of the panels, which, upon closer inspection, are shown to be made up of many smaller, more complex elements. Likewise, the language is direct, and I hesitate to use the word simple. Instead, I'll say classic. This is a tale set in the ancient times where stories and legends were being formed that would and continue to influence mankind to this day. The speech adheres to conventions of these big ideas, these big classic stories. Similarly, the characters are less detailed character studies and more archetypes. The streetwise female thief, lithe and smart and quick and deadly, but unable to fully shed the maternal element natural to her sex. The gentle giant, the powerful pacifist, the mad king. They speak directly because they are styled on concepts over 5,000 years old. They don't need quips and Bendis banter. Their stories and roles are immortal. I fully intend to purchase the entire run of this book in physical format for my children. I'll be placing them on a shelf alongside my Asterix collection, which will one day become their Asterix collection. Entrusting part of my children's wonder and imagination to his work is the greatest compliment I can give Matt Crotts.